Hallo.
Currency English.
uh, yes.
Está bien. Un Doppelpack Menü.
I don't understand German.
German comedy. It's a thing.
They finally discovered comedy, guys. And you know what? They discovered some pretty good wine, too. What's going on, real people?
High quality regions in Germany. My favorite wine coming out of this country, condensed just into one video. So, without further ado, the climate and grape growing conditions of Germany. We have no real influence from any oceans or any major seas. We do have a lot of river influence, though, but we are in a landlocked country, not in a landlocked country, but we are in a country, in a region that is not seeing a lot of influences from any moderating influences like an ocean or anything like that. So cool continental is what we're looking at. Lots of steep slopes facing all these rivers in Germany. We have the Mosel, we also have the Rhine, and we're seeing a lot of these vineyards have this beautiful sunlight reflection happening across the water, heating up the vines on the slopes. Also, this condition next to the rivers is optimal for botrytis. So we're seeing a lot of botrytized wines in these regions near the rivers. Harvest is generally over a period of weeks to months, and is definitely dependent on the amount of weight that each of the grapes holds, which is directly correlated to the amount of sugar content.
All right. And that ties perfectly into German wine laws. So most German wines are PDO wines, but some PGI wines are made using the labeling term Landwein. We're seeing a lot of German in this episode, so you're in for a doozy. But wines without a GI can be labeled as Deutscher wine, and there is a system that is entirely based off of the sugar content in the grapes, and that's why we had to harvest in different kind of like waves pretty much, because you got to get that right sugar content in order for it to qualify for a label. So starting up, Qualitätswein. First off, it must come from one of the 13 growing regions that we have on the map, and we'll talk about a couple. This region must be present on the label as well. You have your Prädikatswein, which is a category kind of within Qualitätswein. Your grapes must be made with a higher sugar content here. And finally, we have Verband Deutscher Prädikatsweinguter, or the VDP. They're like a little, my wine professor described them as like the German wine mafia. They're a group of people who want to designate their wines as different based on the French idea of quality rather than the German metric of sugar content. So these guys have their own vineyards, their own wine classifications, and they are said to have like the best vineyard quality because they are ranking on quality. Your permitted grapes vary from region to region. We're talking about VDP Erste Lage, which is a single vineyard, and you have VDP Große Lage, which is also a single vineyard, but you have dry wines that are called VDP Großes Gewächs. That's for, and then you have better sites with stricter restrictions.
And we'll see this GG wine come on a little later as well when we talk about Riesling, which is our most widely planted white grape in Germany. We're seeing this be the really flagship grape of this country. Like I said, the most plantings in Germany, and the variety of styles that we have for Riesling are immense in Germany. Our dry styles are going to be labeled under Qualitätswein, while our more sweet styles are going to be on this Partikat system, going from Cabinet all the way up to Trockenbeer and Auslese being our sweetest style. And many of the best are labeled this GG wine. So our Partikat system, this is going from the lowest amount of must weight to the highest amount of must weight. And the more must weight you have, the more sugar is concentrated in your grape that you have on the bottom cabinet. So this is going to be a lighter bodied with more aromas of green apples and citrus. One of Riesling's real benchmarks, it's going to be more towards the acidic side, and it would be high acid as well, characteristic of the grape. Alcohol is usually going to be around 8 to 12%, and this can be sweetened, just not by botrytization or drying, through adding sauce reserve, which is unfermented grape juice. in the region, and some residual sugars can add a little bit extra body and can even add acidity as well for cabinet. Spätlese are our next level, made in the same style as cabinet. However, we're having a little bit more concentration because we have a little bit more sugar, so it gets a little bit riper and there's a little bit more body due to that residual sugar that's left. Alcohol is going to be a little higher, and we're going to have some sweetness levels depending on style. Auslese, individually harvested, this is going to be extra ripe grape bunches, providing a super rich and super ripe wine, taking it a step above Spätlese in our previous level. And then this isn't required for Auslese, but Noble Rot is important to have to achieve the style and achieve the grape must weight proper for Auslese.
All right, we're moving now into our higher tiers of sugar content. We have our Bier and Auslese. We have a little BA next to it because it does pop up, and we don't want to have to always type out Bier and Auslese. So when you're making a Bier and Auslese, Noble Rot is actually not required, but it can occur. And because of this, Bier and Auslese is not made every vintage. The next step up, we're going to have Eiswein. It's a nice German word because it sounds like ice and wine. So you have infrequent production here, and this is made by freezing the grapes on the vine. And as such, you get a balance of acidity and sweetness. And sometimes you'll see winemakers use like New Oak and MLF. Finally, topping it all off, our TBA, our Trockenbier and Auslese. So you actually need Noble Rot to actually reach the required must rate, your sugar content, and it is highly regarded for quality sweet wine. And like I said, it's not made for every vintage. People are not continually pumping out TBAs every vintage.
So that is also going to be sort of, you'll see there's, as the must weight increases, so does the price point, with TBA being the most expensive. Some of our other grape varieties, aside from Riesling, Müller-Thurgau, Spätburgunder, Dornfelder. So Müller-Thurgau, we're seeing some production in, I believe, Austria. I think a little bit of production in France, not a lot. Generally high acid, slightly floral and fruity. Spätburgunder is Germany's name for their Pinot Noir grapes, generally being having a lot of production in the Baden region as well as Pfalz, creating really fruity, nice and dry, and a light style of wine. Definitely a bit of oak as well. Dornfelder, light-bodied, sort of fruity and more on that red fruited side, and not very much exported. Generally, one of the wines that the German people are going to keep within their borders and drink themselves.
All right, moving on. Important regions. We talked about 13 major wine producing regions in Germany. These are just the handful that WSET outlines as very important. Starting off with the Mosel. And here, Riesling dominates production. This is going to be a very common theme, that Riesling is planted pretty much everywhere. You have this section of the Mosel called the Middle Mosel. Guess where that is? Where you have three villages in particular, the villages of Piesport, Bernkastel, and Wehlein. They have the best vineyard sites